Staff Sergeant Rachel Santos had been operating the M1 Abrams for 3 years, but she'd never disobeyed a direct order until today. "Santos, hold your position," came the radio command as enemy forces surrounded a SEAL team in the valley below. "Do not engage without authorization." Santos watched through her thermal scope as 12 elite operators took defensive positions behind inadequate cover, outnumbered 10-1. The authorization they needed would take 20 minutes. The SEALs had maybe 5. That's when Rachel made a decision that would either save lives or end her military career. The sun blazed mercilessly over the Iraqi desert as Rachel Santos adjusted her position in the commander's cupola of her M1 Abrams main battle tank. 3 years of operating the 70-ton war machine had taught her to read the battlefield like a book, and right now, every page was screaming danger. Her tank, call sign Iron Wolf, sat positioned on high ground, overlooking a valley that intelligence had designated as a potential insurgent stronghold. The morning had started as routine reconnaissance. Scan the area, report enemy activity, maintain overwatch for friendly forces operating in the region. Nothing about this morning felt routine anymore. "Iron Wolf, this is Overwatch," crackled the voice of Captain Morrison, her commanding officer, through the radio. "SEAL Team 6 has encountered heavier resistance than anticipated. Maintain your position and provide surveillance support only." Rachel acknowledged the transmission while watching the tactical situation unfold below. Through her thermal imaging system, she could see 12 figures in full combat gear moving through the rocky terrain of the valley floor. SEAL Team 6, some of the most elite warriors in the world, conducting what should have been a straightforward intelligence-gathering mission. But intelligence had been wrong again. Instead of the small insurgent cell they'd expected to find, the SEALs had walked into a carefully planned ambush. Enemy fighters were emerging from concealed positions throughout the valley, moving with coordination that suggested extensive preparation and local knowledge. "Overwatch, this is Neptune 6. We have visual on approximately 40 hostiles moving to surround our position, requesting immediate extraction." Rachel felt her stomach tighten. 40 enemy fighters against 12 SEALs, even elite ones, was not favorable odds. The rocky terrain provided some cover, but the insurgents held the high ground on 3 sides of the valley. "Neptune 6, be advised, extraction helicopter is 20 minutes out. Can you hold?" Rachel could hear the stress in both voices. The SEAL team leader was maintaining professional calm, but the situation was deteriorating rapidly. Captain Morrison was following protocol, but protocol was about to get 12 elite operators killed. "Iron Wolf, report on enemy strength and positions." Rachel began a detailed assessment of the tactical situation, providing intelligence that would help command make decisions about how to respond. But even as she spoke, she knew that by the time those decisions were made and authorization was granted, it would be too late. The M1 Abrams was more than just a tank. It was a mobile weapons platform capable of delivering devastating firepower with precision accuracy. Its 120mm main gun could eliminate enemy positions from distances exceeding 3 kilometers. Its machine guns could suppress infantry movements across wide areas. Its armor could withstand most weapons the insurgents possessed. Most importantly, its mere presence on the battlefield often caused enemy forces to retreat rather than face engagement with one of the world's most advanced main battle tanks. "Neptune 6, this is Overwatch. Authorization for heavy support is being processed. Hold your position." Rachel watched through her scope as the first exchange of gunfire erupted in the valley below. Muzzle flashes sparked from enemy positions as the insurgents opened fire on the trapped SEALs. The elite operators returned fire with disciplined precision, but they were outnumbered and surrounded. Processing authorization meant the request was working its way through multiple levels of command, each requiring approval from officers who were increasingly removed from the immediate tactical situation. In a perfect world, this system prevented rash decisions and unnecessary risks. This wasn't a perfect world. Iron Wolf, this is Overwatch. What's your assessment of enemy anti-armor capability? Rachel studied the insurgent positions, looking for signs of rocket-propelled grenades, anti-tank missiles, or other weapons that could threaten her heavily armored vehicle. She saw small arms, machine guns, and what appeared to be mortars, but nothing that posed a serious threat to her heavily armored vehicle. Overwatch, ISS minimal anti-armor threat. Enemy appears to be equipped primarily with small arms and light weapons. Copy that. Continue observation. The firefight in the valley was intensifying. Rachel could see the SEAL's defensive perimeter contracting as enemy forces closed in from multiple directions. The elite operators were fighting with the skill and courage that had made them legendary. But courage couldn't overcome impossible odds. Overwatch, Neptune 6, we have 2 wounded and ammunition is running low. We need support now. Neptune 6, authorization is still pending. Helicopter extraction is 10 minutes out. 10 minutes was an eternity in combat. Rachel had been in enough firefights to know that situations like this could collapse in seconds. Once the enemy achieved close contact with the SEAL positions, superior numbers and local knowledge would overwhelm even the most elite training. Rachel's hands moved automatically through the tank's fire control procedures, even though she had no authorization to engage. She identified enemy positions, calculated ranges and wind deflection, and prepared firing solutions for targets that posed the greatest threat to the trapped SEALs. Her gunner, Specialist Torres, had been tracking the same targets. "Sergeant, we could break up that attack with just a few rounds." "I know," Rachel replied, "but we don't have authorization. Those SEALs are going to die." "I know that too." The tactical situation continued to deteriorate. Enemy fighters were now close enough to the SEAL positions that Rachel could see individual insurgents moving between rocks and using hand signals to coordinate their assault. Neptune 6, this is Overwatch. What's your current ammunition status? Overwatch, we're down to about 30%. At current expenditure rate, we'll be dry in 5 minutes. Rachel felt a cold certainty settle in her stomach. Once the SEALs ran out of ammunition, the firefight would become a massacre. 12 elite operators would die because authorization to help them was trapped in a bureaucratic process designed for situations that allowed time for careful consideration. Iron Wolf, this is Overwatch. Authorization is still being processed. Maintain position and continue reporting. Rachel stared through her scope at the valley below, watching American soldiers fight for their lives while she sat on a hill with the firepower to save them, paralyzed by regulations and procedures. She thought about the oath she'd taken when she joined the Army, about protecting and defending American lives. She thought about the training that had prepared her to operate one of the world's most advanced weapon systems. She thought about the trust placed in her by the soldiers fighting below, who believed that the American military would do everything possible to bring them home. Most of all, she thought about the letters she would have to help write to families if those 12 SEALs died while she watched. "Specialist Torres," she said quietly. "Yes, Sergeant?" "Load high explosive. Target the enemy position at grid reference 567432. Torres hesitated. "Sergeant, we don't have authorization." "Load the round, Specialist." Rachel keyed her radio. "Overwatch, this is Iron Wolf. I'm going to engage enemy positions threatening Neptune 6. "Negative. Iron Wolf, you do not have authorization to engage. Maintain your position." "Overwatch, those SEALs are going to die if we don't act now." "Iron Wolf, you are ordered to maintain position and await authorization. Do not engage." Rachel looked through her scope one more time. The enemy assault was reaching its climax. Insurgent fighters were advancing on the SEAL positions from 3 directions. moving with the confidence of fighters who knew they were about to overwhelm their opponents. She could follow orders and watch 12 elite operators die, or she could do what tank crews were trained to do: bring overwhelming firepower to save American lives. Specialist Torres, is that round loaded? Loaded and ready, Sergeant. Rachel made her decision. Iron Wolf, engaging. The M1 Abrams shuddered as its 120mm main gun fired, sending a high explosive round screaming across the valley at over 1,500 meters per second. The projectile struck the primary enemy position with devastating effect, eliminating the machine gun nest that had been directing fire at the trapped SEALs. Iron Wolf, this is Overwatch. You are ordered to cease fire immediately. Rachel ignored the radio transmission, already identifying her next target. The insurgent assault had been disrupted by the unexpected tank fire, but insurgent fighters were still moving to surround the SEAL positions. Target the mortar position at grid reference 568431. Identified, Sergeant. Fire. The second round eliminated the enemy mortar team that had been preparing to rain indirect fire on the SEALs. The psychological effect was as important as the physical destruction. Insurgent fighters began to realize they were facing a main battle tank, not just a small unit of isolated soldiers. Iron Wolf, this is Overwatch. You are in direct violation of orders. Cease fire and return to base immediately. Rachel switched to the SEAL team's frequency. Neptune 6, this is Iron Wolf. I'm going to engage enemy positions threatening Neptune 6. Neptune 6, this is Actual. We didn't think anyone was coming. Well, we're here now. Stand by. Rachel had identified the key enemy positions that were preventing the SEALs from moving to a defensible position where helicopter extraction would be possible. 3 more targets needed to be eliminated to create a corridor through which the elite operators could escape. Specialist Torres, machine gun positions at grid reference 567429, 568433, and 569431. We're going to engage them in sequence. Roger, Sergeant. Ready to fire. Over the next 2 minutes, Rachel's tank systematically destroyed the enemy positions that were preventing the SEAL extraction. Each round was placed with precision that reflected years of training and the advanced fire control systems of the M1 Abrams. The effect on enemy morale was immediate and decisive. Insurgent fighters who had been confident in victory against trapped SEALs had no desire to face a main battle tank in open combat. The coordinated assault collapsed as enemy forces broke contact and withdrew to positions where they couldn't be engaged by tank fire. Neptune 6, your escape route is clear. Move north to grid reference 570435 for extraction. Iron Wolf, we're moving now. Thanks for the save. Rachel watched through her thermal scope as the 12 SEALs moved rapidly through the corridor she had created, carrying their wounded and reaching the designated extraction point just as the rescue helicopter arrived. Mission accomplished. 12 elite operators would go home to their families because someone had been willing to act when action was needed. Iron Wolf, this is Overwatch. Return to base immediately for disciplinary action. Rachel acknowledged the transmission and began the process of returning to base, knowing that she would face serious consequences for disobeying direct orders. Courts-martial were possible. Reduction in rank was probable. Discharge from the military was a real possibility, but 12 SEALs were alive. The drive back to base gave Rachel time to consider what she had done and what the consequences might be. Military discipline required following orders, even when those orders seemed wrong. The chain of command existed to ensure coordinated action and prevent individual decisions that might compromise larger operations. But military service also required protecting American lives and completing the mission when circumstances demanded immediate action. Rachel had spent 3 years learning to operate the M1 Abrams, not as an academic exercise,
but as preparation for moments when American soldiers needed the firepower and protection that only main battle tanks could provide. Today had been one of those moments. The base was buzzing with activity when Rachel returned. Word of the SEAL rescue had spread quickly, along with news that it had been accomplished by a tank crew acting without authorization.
Captain Morrison was waiting at the motor pool when Iron Wolf rolled through the gates. "Santos, dismount your vehicle and report to my office immediately." "Yes, sir." Rachel climbed down from her tank, knowing it might be the last time she would operate the vehicle that had been her home and responsibility for 3 years. Whatever happened next, she had done what she believed was right. Captain Morrison's office was small and cluttered with the paperwork that defined modern military administration. He gestured for Rachel to sit, then studied her for a long moment before speaking. "Staff Sergeant Santos, explain to me why you thought it was acceptable to disobey direct orders." "Sir, 12 SEALs were about to be overrun by enemy forces. The authorization process was taking too long." "The authorization process exists for good reasons, Sergeant. It prevents unnecessary risks and ensures proper coordination of military assets." "Yes, sir, but the SEALs didn't have time for the authorization process." Morrison opened a file folder and began reading. "SEAL Team 6 reports that your intervention was decisive in preventing casualties and enabling successful extraction. The enemy force was larger and better coordinated than initial intelligence suggested." Rachel said nothing, waiting for Morrison to reach whatever conclusion he'd drawn. "Santos, you violated direct orders and endangered a valuable piece of equipment by engaging enemy forces without proper authorization." "Yes, sir." "You also saved the lives of 12 elite operators who would likely have been killed or captured without your intervention." "Sir, I did what I thought was necessary." Morrison closed the file and looked directly at Rachel. "Staff Sergeant, the military needs soldiers who can follow orders, but it also needs soldiers who can think independently when circumstances require immediate action." Rachel wasn't sure where this conversation was heading. "Your actions today demonstrate exactly the kind of initiative and tactical thinking we need in tank commanders. But they also demonstrate a willingness to put your judgment above that of your commanding officers." "Sir, I never intended to undermine command authority." "I know you didn't, but intent doesn't change the fact that you did." Morrison paused, clearly wrestling with how to handle a situation that didn't fit neatly into standard disciplinary categories. "Santos, you're being transferred to the 3rd Armored Division's Rapid Response Unit. It's a specialized assignment for tank crews who have demonstrated the ability to operate independently in high-stress situations." Rachel blinked, not sure she had understood correctly. "Sir, I'm not being court-martialed." "You're being promoted. The Rapid Response Unit needs staff sergeants who can make critical decisions without waiting for authorization when American lives are at stake." "Sir, I don't understand." Morrison smiled for the first time since Rachel had entered his office. "Santos, sometimes the military needs soldiers who can break rules to save lives. We just need to make sure they're in positions where that kind of thinking is an asset rather than a liability." Rachel felt a wave of relief mixed with continued confusion. "What about violating direct orders?" "Officially, you engaged enemy forces threatening friendly units after determining that immediate action was necessary to prevent casualties. Your quick thinking and decisive action resulted in successful completion of the mission." And unofficially?" "Unofficially, 12 SEALs owe their lives to a tank commander who understood that sometimes following orders isn't the same thing as doing what's right." Rachel left Morrison's office with transfer orders to a unit she'd never heard on, but which apparently specialized in exactly the kind of independent thinking that had gotten her in trouble today. 2 weeks later, she found herself at Fort Knox, Kentucky, reporting to Colonel Sarah Mitchell, commanding officer of the 3rd Armored Division's Rapid Response Unit. "Staff Sergeant Santos, I've read your file.
Iraq SEAL rescue unauthorized engagement of enemy forces. Yes, ma'am. Tell me, if you had to do it again, would you make the same decision? Rachel considered the question carefully. Ma'am, if 12 elite operators were about to be overrun by enemy forces and I had the firepower to save them, yes, I would make the same decision. Colonel Mitchell nodded approvingly. That's exactly the answer I was hoping to hear. Ma'am? Santos, this unit specializes in rapid response to situations where conventional military procedures are inadequate. We deploy tank crews who can think independently, act decisively, and take responsibility for their actions.
Rachel was beginning to understand why she had been transferred. Our missions typically involve supporting special operations forces, conducting emergency extractions, and providing heavy firepower in situations where time is more important than authorization. Ma'am, that sounds like exactly the kind of assignment where someone could get in serious trouble. Colonel Mitchell smiled. Star Sergeant, you already got in serious trouble for doing exactly what we need our people to do. The difference is that here, your commanding officers understand that sometimes saving lives requires breaking rules. Over the following months, Rachel learned that the Rapid Response Unit operated under different standards than conventional armored units. They trained for scenarios where tank crews had to make immediate tactical decisions without extensive command oversight. Their missions took them to situations where American forces needed heavy armor support, but couldn't wait for the authorization processes that governed normal military operations. Rachel discovered that her decision to save the SEALs hadn't been an aberration. It had been exactly the kind of thinking that special operations required from their supporting units. 6 months after the SEAL rescue, Rachel found herself back in Iraq, this time as part of a rapid response team supporting a high-risk extraction mission. When the situation deteriorated and conventional procedures proved inadequate, she didn't hesitate to make the tactical decisions necessary to complete the mission. The difference was that this time, her commanding officers expected her to think independently and act decisively when circumstances required it. Rachel had learned that the military was large enough to accommodate different approaches to leadership and decision-making. Some units required strict adherence to procedure and careful coordination through chain of command. Others needed soldiers who could break rules to save lives. The M1 Abrams was still her home, still her responsibility, and still the weapon system she used to protect American forces operating in dangerous environments. But now she operated it in a context where her willingness to disobey orders when necessary was considered an asset rather than a liability. Sometimes the most important military decision wasn't following orders. It was knowing when to break them. And sometimes the difference between a disciplinary action and a commention was simply being in the right unit at the right time with the right mission. Rachel Santos had found her place in the military behind the controls of a main battle tank, ready to bring overwhelming firepower to save American lives, with or without authorization. Because some things were more important than procedure, and some decisions were too important to wait for permission. Thanks for watching. If you like this video, you can subscribe to see more incredible stories like this one.